What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fitness in Business podcast. John Salmon here, and today I'm joined by Dan Brisblat. I hope I said that right. How are you, mate?
Mate, I'm very well. Thank you for having me today. I'm looking forward to having a good talk to you.
Mate, I appreciate you spending the time. I know we're all busy in our own ways, but I really appreciate it. Well, I hope we're all productive in our own ways, but I'm always honored for people giving up time in their busy schedules to jump on and have a chat, which will ultimately help someone else as a listener, ideally, to get themselves fit for business, which is the whole idea of the podcast. So if you're just tuning in on YouTube or wherever you're watching the video, thanks for joining us. We're going to have a chat today around fitness, stress, performance, and all the things that sort of encompass being fit for business. So, mate, I'd love to get a little bit of a background. I know we had a chat on the phone the other day, and
hmm
particularly for the listeners, just a bit of a background on you, what you do for work for your business, and probably a bit about why you think we're here, which is being fit for business, which is awesome. So, take it away, mate.
All right. So when I finished school, I joined my family business, which is Eureka Street Furniture. Back then, we had one store. I joined that, started in the factory, working with my family, working with my dad, and I started selling and things in the stores earlier in my career, sort of my youth, at 15 years old. I started selling in the stores, and obviously it was a natural progression. So I finished school, went straight into the factory, did furniture restoration, and basically worked my way up. We continued to grow. At 20 years old, I bought a home. I'm dyslexic, and I went to Brisbane Grammar, so I think I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I needed to achieve something. So when I was 20, just before my 21st, I bought my first home. My parents said to me, "Why are you buying a house? Property market hasn't moved in a decade, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, all my friends I went to school with are finishing uni with a degree, and I'm running one of your shops, so I think I'd like to buy a home." So I did. Back then it was bloody cheap, and I bought my first home. Probably within 6 months of that, I did the year overseas, like a lot of people do. I did a stint over there, and while I was over there, Eureka grew a little bit bigger. My dad called me and said, "I'd like you to come back. We're growing. I'd like help. But only come back if you're coming back by your own choice. I don't want you to feel obliged." And at that stage, I was just working in a pub job in England, living and working, 70 hours a week for 120 quid. I hadn't done much travelling since I first got there. I travelled a lot when I got there, and then, just got into the normal life. So came home from Europe a year later, just under, and my house had doubled in price. So myself and another good mate, who I'm still good mates with now, he does a lot of property development, we both bought homes. We both were in sales before that, and we both came home and our houses had doubled. He said to me, "Let's sell our houses and get into cars with him." And I looked at it and thought, no, I'll stay in Eureka. And by this stage, we were growing. We opened a store in Townsville, and we were continuing to grow. He's now gone on to own multiple car dealerships over the years, and now he's in development, done very well. And I work a lot with him now. But it gave me a bit of an insight into property at a young age. From there, obviously my house had doubled, so I bought a second home, continued at Eureka. This is all pre-GFC, pre-iPhones, pre-social media, so life was simpler then. Bought and sold, flipped a few houses, continued at Eureka. Then the GFC hit in about 2007, 2008, and that was obviously something that we'd never seen before, turned business on its head. I went from thinking I was a little genius to realising I wasn't, and it was very humbling. I went from flipping a house every year, and back then you'd buy a house for 175, 180 grand. A year later you could sell it and make $100,000 tax free. So proportionate to your investment, your return was huge. Your in and outs were small because your stamp duty and your commission was bugger all at those prices. That's obviously subsequently got harder as house prices have gone up and up. So the flipping of houses isn't what it once was. Anyway, carried on at Eureka until 5 years ago. We grew to 28 stores when I left, across from Cairns all the way down south to Canberra.
Wow.
I left there, I was its chief operations officer when I left. By that stage, my brother and I were running it. We had 28 stores. I did all the buying internationally and ran all the marketing. So it was a lot of pressure. if the product didn't sell, I felt it was my fault. And if the marketing didn't work, I felt it was me and my fault. So obviously, as we grew, it was a lot of pressure. And both my brother and I, both our partners were pregnant at that stage just before I left. And at 28 shops, I didn't want to get any bigger. I sort of wanted to maintain that and finely tune what we had. And we both always had the fantasy that one day we would open a real estate office if we floated or sold or whatever happened. Funnily enough, my grandfather was the founding president of the Real Estate Institute of Queensland. So I've got his plaque up in my office. He was the first property valuer in Queensland, and he curled the first auction for Ray White, residential auction in Queensland. So I guess, without being
corny. That's a cool piece of history, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's behind my desk up on the wall, and he's also got the valuation certificate with a number 1, so he's the first valuer. So I don't know whether you want to say property is in our blood. My dad came from Israel, came here with nothing, and he hated landlords, so he always tried to acquire buildings. So we were sort of, that was engraved in us from a young age. Anyway, left Eureka 5 years ago next month. And thought, shit, what am I going to do? Did my real estate license, got a job with Stockwell Development leading into COVID. Two of my other good friends that I grew up with had left businesses. One was a chippy, one was a sparky, went into real estate, and they were cutting their teeth. And real estate's very tough, when you first start, because why would somebody trust you with their most expensive asset if you've got no runs on the board? But somebody's got to give you a go, otherwise you never will.
For sure.
So I'd left their businesses and got into it earlier than I had. So I'd listened to them and listened to their issues that they had with, or their grievances. So I thought, I'll find a good place where I can stay. So a lot of agents sort of jump office to office, and pretty much the general gist of it is most real estate offices will give you a go, because you're on a debit credit system, so it doesn't cost them really anything apart from the training. You pay back your wage in commission every quarter, and it's a good way of building a database for them, having eager people on the phone. So I joined Stockwell, and I'm working under Sammy Kelso, who I'm one of my best friends now, and it was a walk in the park for me compared with running retail. I went from 150 staff and trying to control 28 locations and reading reports. I just had to look after myself and made sure I did a good job. So I sold 11 apartments in 12 weeks with them and made good money. Then COVID hit, and I unfortunately had a relationship breakdown with the mother of my child, so it was a bit of a crappy time for me. COVID hit. I was living in Pullendale on my acreage property there, and in the family home I purchased for the family, like for myself, my partner, and my daughter. So it was a lonely time, stuck there for 3 months. For months and months with couldn't go anywhere, no neighbours, starting family court and all that. So it was a really shitty time, if I'm being honest. Excuse my language.
No, go for it.
COVID hit, so I finished up at Stockwell, but fortunately they're good people, and they continued to pay out my commissions as all my 11 properties settled. Which gave me a good earn to start in real estate. And other friends that I'd known in furniture, one particular guy is a great friend, he got out of furniture and got into real estate long before me, and he said, you really need a year's worth of wages because you don't really make any money for a year. Now, I've never been professionally told this, but the statistic I've always been led to believe is the least likely people to succeed in real estate are men starting over the age of 30.
Yeah, wow.
And that makes sense. Now, I'm well and truly past that bracket, but that makes sense because over the age of 30 you have mortgages, children, commitments, and also you're a man. You're not a young boy anymore that can be dictated to and how you should dress and how you should talk, and that was the thing I found. So I finished up at Stockwell. I thought, well, during this COVID time, I'll do my full real estate license, which I did. I struggled to do it, if I'm being honest as well. I had to get tutoring and things. I didn't study in school, so I had never studied, but my future depended on it. So I completed my full real estate license and got a job with Place Real Estate in Graceville. during COVID. And
Yep.
that was not far from home. I knew them. I went for an interview there before I joined Stockwell, and they were good people. So I started there, and I did a year there. Lovely people, good culture, just didn't necessarily align with me and my values. And after, I think I'd flipped about 12 or 13 houses of my own in that time. So I really felt for the vendor, and I feel for the buyers. So my approach was I wanted to be completely authentic. I didn't want to be scripted. I didn't want to drive a white Beamer. I didn't want to go to work in a pinstripe suit and polished shoes. I wanted to be who I was. And within 3 weeks of starting there, I said to the girl who did all the training, she was a really cool English girl, so they don't really understand. I said, by this stage I was 38. And I said, they've hired me because of obviously my history, my background, and what I know, and probably my network had a large portion to do with it. I remember at the second interview they asked to look at my phone, and they went straight into my contacts and scrolled to the bottom and saw I had 2,700 phone numbers or something. So I can't remember, but it was about that. And I was like, I said I want to learn like I learned from my dad. I want to be partnered with somebody who's really good, and I want to just follow them, and I want to learn. I don't want to just sit like a 22-year-old kid and be on the phone ringing everybody I know. And I'd seen my other friends who had left real estate doing exactly that, and I'm like, I'm not doing that at 38. Anyway, so I joined Place. I had to start as a lead agent, where most people start as an associate, but because I had custody with my daughter and I was a single dad, I couldn't really, tell people I can't be at work after 1 o'clock on a Saturday, or I can't be in the office on a Friday because that's my time. So I knew I started as a lead agent on my own, which is pretty unheard of in the beginning of your career. But anyway, I battled it out, did a year, and I think 2 days after my year was up, I finished up there, and I opened my own office.
Awesome.
Under the agency. So the agency I was the first agent, I believe, in Queensland. David Price was heading up. He was the GM. He was sent to see me by Sammy Kelso, my previous boss at Stockwell. And he came to see me. He said, "What do you need?" And I said, "I don't want plastic trophies. I don't want fancy parties. I want to make a fat comm and be left alone."
Yep.
And he said, "That's perfect for me." So we talked it through. I'd met with lots of other companies, but I didn't want all the branding and all the, KPIs and meetings every week. I don't like all that stuff. I'm a pretty motivated person to just get up and do it. And I don't like, I ran a business with 150 people. I was used to pushing people. I didn't need somebody trying to push me. So I did that. I opened the office in May, June, 3 years ago, I think. And I guess, and I regretted it, but within 6 months had a team of 5 people, had my website, and all I knew was to grow.
So it felt natural to grow, but
it's all I knew.
You didn't want. Yeah.
It's all I knew. It was just like, got myself established. It was really funny. Another good friend of mine at the time, Ben Wakely, who's a very established agent, same age as me, went to Nudgell and to Grammar. I went and saw him, and he said, "Dan, when you open your own office, it's a completely new kettle of fish. People think you've made it." And it was like true. As soon as I started renovating the office, which was funny because it was the shop I managed when I was 20. It was a Eureka shop. One of the rooms in where I'm at now was my bedding.
That same building.
Yeah. So when I moved out at 18, we had a strip of shops in Sherwood, and there was an old house, Queensland, a pretty rundown Queensland. So when I moved out at 18, I lived behind this shop. Then I ran the shop for my family.
Yeah.
And then 20 years later, I ended up opening my own business in one of the shops. So it was a bit, again, a bit of nostalgia, pretty funny how life, just amazes me how life goes around. So I renovated all. As soon as I started putting Instagram stories on opening a shop, I was just jackhammering the floors and getting everything sorted. My phone started ringing. And my mate, Scotty, the one that bought a house, when I bought a house, called me and said, "I've got 3 blocks of land. Would you like it?" And I was like, "Where were you a year ago?" And he said, "I needed to see you could do it." And my ex-brother-in-law, he also called me, had a house to sell in Red Bank. And I said, "Well, again, where were you a year ago?" "We needed to see you could do it." So definitely the perception of having your own office, I think, gave me a kickstart. And that first year at Place, so I sold 11 properties at Stockwell in 3 months. That's one a week almost, to selling 5 houses in a year at Place. And then within a month of opening my office, I had 13 listings on my own, and I was off and running.
That's awesome.
Off and running. That was cool. It was really cool, and the training was there if you wanted it. The assistance was there if you wanted it. The back end support, being dyslexic, obviously, it was really crucial for me to have strong back end support. But I've done a lot of research into how our brains work, and it's very different, to, I guess, average people. So, we're very solution focused, and so things that are simple for us just that doesn't happen to people with normal minds, and vice versa. I can sit there looking at a spreadsheet for 2 days trying to work out a send an invoice. You know what I mean? So that worked. It was a good fit for my personality, my strengths, and then I grew a team really quickly. I thought it would be a huge advantage. It was an advantage. There's always a silver lining in every situation, but because everyone's a subby, so I was like, it doesn't cost me anything, but it ended up distracting me from doing what I'm good at and helping them a lot. So it got to a point, so I had a PA and 3 or 4 other agents, and slowly it just got back to myself and a PA, and now I've got a team of 3, myself, another agent, and an office administrating girl who actually worked with me at Place. So it was very humbling. I remember I told the story at my year party that they threw for me at Place. I said, I went from running a company with 150 staff that did everything I said, to then coming here where if I asked for more than 50 brochures, the receptionist would yell at me and put me back in my place. But then 18 months later, she was working for me. So it's funny how life works, man. So that was cool, and I'm loving it. I've loved the journey ever since, and I've learnt a lot. And it's a great industry if you can stay consistent. And I've had a lot of agents come, and I get calls a lot because I've got a different approach, I think, than most. But I get calls saying, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And I said, just work out who you are. I think is the most important thing. Work out what your strengths are, be comfortable with what your weaknesses are, and be honest with yourself. And go, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at, and just try to hone in at what you're good at and what your point of difference can be.
100%. Mate, thanks for sharing. That was a great, since leaving school, that was a really concise, summary. It's impressive.
Sorry if it was too much information.
No, it's really good, man, because it gives me and anyone listening that perspective on time in business. The start of any podcast is usually that authority building space, and why would I listen to John and Dan have this conversation? And that's really valuable for someone who's listening, going, wow, this guy's got a journey in business through multiple different backgrounds and is still in it. And that's ultimately the thing behind fitness in business, is how do you stay fit mentally and physically and stay in business and not burn out, get overwhelmed, become sick, which I know you've got a journey with, which we're going to tap into in a second, if that's all right. But you said something just before about distraction, and I'm really big on it. There was a phrase someone taught me a while ago. It was feed focus, starve distraction. And on the note of distraction, when you talked about originally just wanting to run your own show and then ending up bringing people on to help growth, because that's obviously what you're driven to do. What did you notice? What were the distractions? Was it that the support they needed? Was it you felt you had to manage them even though they were kind of meant to be doing their own thing? And where did it ultimately affect you having that? Because that initial thing of bringing people in was almost a distraction, but then it led to more distraction, and that's massive. So do you mind sharing a bit more about that?
Yeah, so obviously because I was only new in real estate, I couldn't go and recruit guns that are veterans, so I had to I was fairly green, even with my business history and buying and selling, and it's essentially the same practice, and I think empathy and humility is crucial. And I think, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think there's this industry particularly, people don't like to show vulnerability, empathy, and things like that, where I think it's crucial. Like, we're all humans, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
So I had to go and find myself people who I didn't want to say that are stamped Ray White or stamped too much, because that's not my model. And it was funny, when I was at Place, I like wearing a muscle tee and a jacket and trousers and RMs. And I remember I turned up one day like that, and they said, "Oh, you're going to the Brookfield show?" And I said, "No, this is how I like to dress. I feel comfortable. The motto is, people have to know you, like you, trust you, be authentic." Well, this is me.
Yep.
And so it was funny when I opened my own business, and then I started recruiting people. One particular young fellow, really great guy, he was very Ray White, very pinstripe suit, polished shoes, immaculate. And I was like, he's like, "Do you want me to go and buy this stuff so I dress like you?" I said, "No." I said, "That goes completely against what I preach." I said, "I can't preach be authentic and be yourself, but dress like me, talk like me. Otherwise, I'm exactly the same as everybody else."
Totally.
So the agency doesn't allow you, or doesn't have it in their system, that you can put QR codes on your business cards. Coming from retail, and I was in charge of the marketing, I wanted to put QR codes on my business cards. So you scan that and it takes you to my listings, my Facebook, Instagram, because I am my brand. And that's how I saw it. So I custom built my own business cards. But then when I hired more people, they're like, "I don't like the QR code. I want my face. I want this." And I was like, "Well, I can't preach, be you, and then tell you not to. So whatever you want, I'll do." But I said, "Trust me, in 6 months' time, you'll be sick of seeing your face." I said, "In the beginning, you want your face on everything, right? But I said, eventually, you'll be sick of it. But you do what you want." I said, "I'll do it for my own reasons." And that was a big thing for me. I was like, be you, people know you, like you, trust you. That's all they drum into you when you start in real estate. And then they want you to talk in a certain way, or dress in a certain way, or dialogue in a certain way. And I'm like, there's a place for it. You need to understand. You need to go through the training and understand. But once you understand, you can pick and choose what suits you. And what I also think is, like, there's a very much the cookie cutter approach. Now, I don't agree with the cookie cutter approach, because that your vendor might be different. Their situation is different. Their property doesn't suit the cookie cutter approach. So I try to look at their situation and try to ask people, why are you selling? There's 3 trigger points as far as I'm concerned, and no one's taught me this: time, money, or terms. When someone's selling, every person that I've ever sold for will tell me money. And then you turn up and the husband's clothes are gone, and you're saying, "Well, you're getting divorced, but you didn't tell me, so now it's time." But they don't tell you, because why would they trust you? They've just met you.
For sure.
We need to know the truth, and the faster you can build honest rapport with someone without the corny crap that you do, or you're trained to do, the faster you can find out the real reason for moving, and then try to tailor a solution when selling. So, sorry, I deferred a little bit away from your question, but hiring people, it was interesting because it was very clear for me that direction. And I made that decision when I was at Place. I said, I want to be myself. I want to offer the service I wish I had received when buying and selling. I want to be completely honest. I want to see every offer. I don't want to wait till Monday to hear from my agent. All the things that I'd learned because I'd been the seller and the buyer so many times. But I tried to train that into my agents, and they just didn't get it. And it was really frustrating for me. And I'd bring people, like Jason Adcock was a huge support to me when I first went out on my own. I went to lunch with him, and I learnt more from him in an hour than I'd learnt from anybody in 6 months.
Yeah.
And he used to come and talk to my team for me. He talked at ARIC 18 months ago, and he came and used to talk to my team, and I'd put on a lunch, and I'd look, and someone would be on their phone doing Snapchat. And I'd look around, somebody would be on their phone watching something on YouTube. It would just give me the shits, because I was like, I'm going out of my way, I'm calling in favours, and they can't be bothered listening. And so that would really frustrate me. Because disrespectful to them, and also you're so green, you should be sucking it up like a sponge. And there was a lot of things like that. There was another particular instance. I got a listing with one of my agents, and we went to do the letterboxes, and he texted me that morning and said, "Oh, Dan, it's raining." I said, "Yeah, it's raining, but are you made of tin? Like, we still got to do the letterboxes." And he goes, "Are you still going?" I said, "Yes, I'll be there. I'll see you there at 10. I got there at 10. It was in Banya. It was a long way from the western suburbs, and he didn't turn up. and I went and did the letterboxes, all his letterboxes in the rain. And ironically, he sent me a Matt Steinway podcast on my way to it about how good, high-performing agents often open its office and they end up making half the money and becoming office managers. And I was listening to it while I was doing his letterboxes. And the irony of it, as I was walking in the rain, I was like, thank you for sending me that, because this is exactly what I'm doing. And I'm far from a high-performing agent, but I was on my way. Yeah. And I got back to my office and my old man popped in because their office is around the corner. He's like, why are you all wet? And I said, I've been doing other people's letterboxes in the rain. He goes, where were they? I said, they didn't come. He said, that's why you're the boss.
100%.
So over the little, and then, I was coming home very stressed and cranky, and my partner at the time was like, Dan, they're causing you more stress than they're making you money. So slowly I didn't wean them out. We just parted ways. Still very good mates with most of them. And since then, I want somebody who, it's not easy. People are the hardest part of every business. So finding somebody that you can work with that understands, doesn't argue back, and trusts your process is not easy.
And I guess and I've never had staff employed in my business, right? So I don't understand, but I have plenty of conversations with lots of clients and people like yourself who do. And I can understand that having people that are misaligned with your vision, mission, goals, which is something I speak to a lot with fitness and wellness and vitality and your energy. Having someone misaligned is a massive distraction. So it's obviously hiring a team that is aligned is so important. Which also,
and it's very difficult because nobody goes to an interview and tells you they're not going to do the right thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Everybody's like, yes, I completely agree. I read your bio and no, it's not the case. Yeah. So, occasionally you might come across somebody who has what I call gumption. They might have the gumption to get up and, when I first started, I was walking 20 Ks a day, dropping off flyers because who was I? I didn't have a database. Why would anybody trust me? I'm very fortunate that I've got a big network of people through my life that has, and my social media has been really crucial for me, that I'm always delivering, information. And I try to do it with my social media as well. Like some of the boys, some of my good friends, like, why do you put your gym things on? I think I talked about this the other day. Why do you put this on? And I said, because I think social media is an insight to who you really are. And again, if you want to be authentic, people have to know your values and and I only learnt this when I moved to the Gold Coast because I didn't know anybody when I moved here 18 months ago. And I was sitting in the gym trying to meet people. I didn't know anyone. Sitting in the sauna trying to meet people. And I was like, people go, what's your story? I said, well, I moved here because I want to be close to my daughter in the custody battle, and I'll commute. I still have an office in Brisbane. And then I sort of realised that really my MO, my lifestyle is work, my daughter, and fitness, or health, more so than fitness. So that's who I am.
And it's great to share because it's part of your personal brand. It's part of you. So people know, like, and trust you when you share the consistency. It builds character, right?
Well, and that's what you hope. And it's funny because you go and watch, I know somebody else that I know in real estate went and watched some social media expert, and they said, check into a coffee shop in your area, do this. And sure, I've been telling that person to do this for the last 6 months. So they straight away hear it from a professional, and they go and do it once, and they do it once.
Yeah.
And they did it very next day, and I haven't seen shit on their Instagram ever since. So it's like, mine is consistent. I work, I train, or I'm with my daughter. That's
totally.
It. That's what's important
huge.
to me.
100%.
So I'm removing a lot of people from my team. I'm always open to growing my team, but at the same time, it's got to be every single thing I look at in life is about return on investment. It's something we learned from my dad, instilled in us. Everything is about the ROI. Is there a return on the investment with the relationship? Not necessarily financial, but everything you do, is there a return for the effort?
Yeah, big time, 100%.
And I think people get sidetracked, and you have to think like that. We'll get more into this as this chat goes on, but I think I talked to you the other day. I was feeling a bit run down last week. I was invited to a dinner on Thursday night, and I really wanted to go. A lot of gym friends, good networking, they're established guys here. I wanted to go. Had my daughter Wednesday, worked Thursday, didn't get back to the Gold Coast until 6, and then that night I got text to go to the TSS business lunch the next day. Fantastic networking opportunity for me. I don't know anyone at TSS. Last time I went to a churchy lunch, I did a development sale of 41 townhouses where I bumped into a guy I knew in the toilets. So I don't like saying no to those things because there's an opportunity. Or you might just have a great time, you might meet a cool person. It's not always about money. But I listened to myself and I said, I know I've got my daughter from Friday to Monday. I've got some pretty important opens on Saturday. I'm feeling a little edgy, and I battled with it. I think we talked on Friday about it. I battled with it Thursday afternoon. I said to the boys, I can't come to the dinner. Would have been great. I copped a bit of shit for it, not going. And then I really wanted to go to that luncheon the next day, but it finished at 4 and I had to pick my little girl up at 2:45. And I was like, the old me would have gone to both, ran myself ragged, tried to find someone to pick my daughter up. And then by Friday night, I would have got home and I would have been short, cranky. But I would have, that was how I lived my life for over 20 years, running from appointment to appointment to appointment, never saying no, because you just never know. We're opportunists. If you're in business, you've got to every day, every extra. When I drop off letters and I've got 20 left, I'm like, I could go to my car now and I'm like, well, what if that 19th last letter, that guy's selling his house and you get a call?
Totally. 100%.
So you do it properly. So, but I didn't go to those meals and I didn't go to that catch up, and I sat home Friday night and I was in great spirits, made a fire with my daughter, had a lovely day, had a fantastic day on Saturday at the Opens and had a lovely weekend. And I thought to myself, I'm still, I suppose, self-parenting myself to, but it's that in itself is a job.
100%. And mate, on the note of like events and social things and saying no, I was discussing this with some family just recently, and we were talking about how often you feel compelled when you want to say no to, whether it's a business opportunity, a family event, whatever it may be. You know, the thing that's not you organizing your own time; it's an invitation elsewhere. That we feel compelled because of whether it's culture or pressure or some sort of external influence, that you feel compelled to have to provide a reason to say no, that I don't want to do something. But that's not the case. You can just not wanting to be there is enough to not, like, if something in your brain or your gut is saying, I don't want to do that, then you literally don't have to do it. So it's awesome to like reflect on those experiences and go, I didn't go to them. And sure, I might have missed out on something, but I'm also so glad that I had this weekend. And then what's the lesson for the next time that happens? You know?
Exactly. And I think in this day and age, you know, with technology and the broader your group of friends are, or the broader your, you know, in our industry, we say your network is your net worth. And, you know, there's all those sayings, you know, look at your friends and you look at your future and all this. And it's all true, you know, it's all true. But something's got to give. And I was one of those people, and I did, because we'll talk about it shortly, what happened with my heart. But last Thursday was a year since my heart failed. And I wrote that big thing on social media, and I said, learning to say no was huge for me because I said yes to everything, always, and I used to get anxiety about it, stressed about it, and we'll talk about it shortly, obviously. But when my heart failed, I think it took me 6 months to learn to say no. I still get guilty. It's still a management process of myself, but learning to say no is, for me personally, was very difficult.
Yeah, big time. Man, I'll dig into that now if that's all right, because that's such a key part of your life and story and everything, which ultimately prompted me being like, that's a great thing for us to discuss that might help someone else. Because with fitness, health, there's a few components with fitness and business, and what I talk about in the podcast and program, and it's being fit, healthy, and strong, having an appearance and a presence that you're proud of. So that's it's very broad, but when you dig deep on all of them, they're very deep. And when people don't like choose to neglect their health and wellness, when they choose to overperform, not in a more than something that's more than healthy, like it becomes unhealthy, there's a few reasons that they'll generally pivot.
I'm losing
And,
you.
you know, I'm sure there's more, but in my perspective, it's like they realize that they're not feeling well and they start to question everything and they make a change in trajectory. Or someone else in their world or their business or their life says, hey, Dan, John, this isn't going really well. Like, have a look at what you're putting out. Like, you know, this isn't really working. You're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're losing weight, you're gaining weight, you're drinking, you're doing nose beers, whatever it is. That's not cool. Or there's a main event and it's the pivotal moment in their life where there's the stroke, the heart attack, the diagnosis of some sort of disease state that makes them either not be here anymore or they get that pivotal change in trajectory where they go, right, I can't keep living like that. And that happened to you a year and a week ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that and what you think led to that, having now reflected on it, and share a bit about that. That'd be awesome.
All right. So if I'm being completely honest, I was a pretty extreme person. In my 20s, I remember my friend Scotty that bought the house that I do developments with. He goes, my nickname is Brizzy. He's like, Brizzy, you burn the candle at both ends. And I did. I partied hard. I worked hard. I trained hard. I did everything to excess. You know, my brother and I would travel overseas on a buying trip, and he's like, Dan, because I'd organise the trip, I'd organise all the factories. He'd go, why do we go to like 5 countries in 7 days? And I'm like, let's get in, get out, get it smashed, come home, you know? And that's just all I knew was extreme. And partied very hard, couldn't sit home with myself. And, you know, if I'd done my lawns and I'd done all my chores and I'd trained for the day, I couldn't just sit and relax by the fire. I'd want to drink or I'd, you know, use drugs from time to time, if I'm being honest. You know, I wanted to surround my house with people. I remember Sophia's mum, when I first met her, she goes, Dan, you have so many people coming and going on a weekend. Sometimes your breakfast people are leaving as your lunch people say hello to them as they're coming through the door. And it was just, that's my personality. I'm ADD. I'm like, let's go. You know, let's cram as much we can to the day. And I lived like that for a very long time. I tried really hard to stop and to slow down. And I tried, you know, like every ADD person, you look in my garage, I've got e-bikes, I've got a Harley, I've got 3 dogs, I've got bulldogs, I've bred bulldogs, I've got a macaw. I've tried everything. I've always trained, but I've tried, this will keep me home, this will keep me quiet, this will give me an interest. But then all of a sudden, in July last year, I moved to the Gold Coast 18 months ago. That was great because what I found, and again, in complete honesty, is when you grow up in Brisbane, you're in business in Brisbane, your family all come from there, and we had quite a big network. There was a lot of obligatory relationships, you know, and I didn't know this was a term. I don't know if other people use it, but since I've moved to the Gold Coast, I'd take my daughter to dancing on a Monday at Indooroopilly when I had her Sundays and Mondays, and I'd bump into 2 or 3 wives of friends I went to school with, and we'd, you know, have a yarn and catch up, and then before you know it, you're organising a dinner. And really, you've got nothing in common with those people anymore, but it's an obligatory relationship. That's how I like to call it. Lovely people, but, you know, lovely people 20 years ago doesn't mean you're the same now. And I was the king of saying yes. And I remember having this D&M with my sister. She's also ADD, and she goes, I'm always at events, and I wish I wasn't there. And I was like, me too. Always. Like, I'd organise it, I'd get there and be like, I wish I'd rather be sitting at home. So moving to the Gold Coast was a big step, I think, for me. I really didn't want to move here. I loved that network. I thought I loved that life, knowing everybody everywhere I went, connections and things. And obviously in real estate, like I travel to Brisbane multiple times a week for business because I don't have those long-standing connections here. And when I first moved, I remember I'd walk around Burleigh for 7 hours trying to, you know, have a conversation. Legit. Like, I'd go to the gym. My partner at the time was like, Dan, you go to the gym for like 4 hours a day now. It was Christmas holidays when we moved, and then she goes, "Where are you now?" I said, "Walking around Burleigh," like just trying to meet people. But after a while, now I bloody love it. Now sometimes if I see, like, I don't know many people, but if I do, I sort of look the other way and keep going because I love having that time to myself.
Yeah.
And so it's quite interesting. And, now, 18, 19 months on, I look back and say, well, the friendships I've created down here are fantastic relationships. And the good thing that I find is that they're relationships based on you presently, the person you are now. They're not the relationship you had when you went to grammar and you finished in 97. And that's the person you were then. Now the relationship, I'm health focused, I'm business focused, I'm family orientated. I appreciate downtime where, I bump into somebody from 20 years ago and they knew the wild Dan or this version. So I really love it. It's like reinventing yourself. And I've never done that because I grew up and lived in Brisbane all my life. A lot of people move and reinvent themselves. I never did it. So I now see the appeal. But yeah, in a nutshell, I was down here working, training, commuting. I was driving back and forth multiple times a week, sometimes 16-hour days, no problem. That's how I was raised. It was funny at Eureka, I always thought, because our reports would start coming through at 7 p.m. and they would continue coming through to 5 a.m. And so as soon as you woke up in the morning, you'd start running through all the reports of all the stores and you'd be emailing shops and I don't know if others felt this, but in my own head, I was like, yeah, if I'm the first to send the email to everybody and I picked apart someone's report and looked at the GPs, I'm the hardest worker. And I don't know, we never discussed it, but that was in my own crazy head. And I had the same approach in real estate. I told my team when I had my team, I said, if I wake up at 5 a.m. and we've had an inquiry overnight and you haven't replied and I reply, then you move from the lead agent. Because I trained myself and I trained my team. Every inquiry, every phone call, every email inquiry, I want you to pretend that's your vendor seeing how dedicated you are to their sale. So if I wake up at 5, this morning I wake up, as soon as you shouldn't do it. You should go and get your sunlight and all the stuff you're meant to do. But I look at my phone as soon as I can focus, check my emails. If there's an email inquiry, I pump out a reply because I brainwashed myself to think like that. But so last July, getting back to that, I always get sidetracked. I was training, I was sauntering, I was cold plunging every day. I thought I was living a healthy life. And then one Thursday, I took my little girl to Wet n Wild. I came home, we made a little fire pit, and I started shivering. I thought, that's weird. Started shivering. By that night, I had 42-degree fever. I was hallucinating. That went on for 2 weeks, and out of nowhere. And the second week, I went to the doctor. They gave me antibiotics. That did nothing. And I was properly hallucinating. Like I was, thinking that my dogs were running around the front yard and I don't have a fenced front yard. It was legit. Anyway, so the antibiotics did nothing. Second week, I saw a different doctor, different GP. He had had a heart attack before. He says, I think you've got an infection in your body. Now we need to find out where. So they started running tests. And after 2 weeks, maybe 10 days, I was like, well, I've got to work. I've got listings, It was myself, Meg, and another young fellow, Meg, my admin assistant, and she's licensed, so she was doing my opens, but I went back to work. Anyway, after 2 weeks, I was like, well, I can't mope around anymore. I'm going back to the gym, back to sauntering, cold plunging, and working normal days, and I was turning up to do photo shoots, and I remember the videographer that I work with, Mitch, a beautiful young guy, he goes, Dan, your voice is quivering and you're shaking. And I was like, so I went to the car. I was living on Codral, and that went for 7 weeks. And every single day, and then, my family thought I was taking drugs. I was putting on heaps of weight. I was trying everything. Like I was wake up in the morning having 2 litres of Barocca, jumping in the ice, like in my pool in July, going to the gym training, having a sauna, eating bugger all, and because I weigh myself every day anyway with gym, and my weight was going up and up, and I was like, this isn't making sense. So I still had a piece of toast, and I'm 2 kilos up. Anyway, the GP I saw is a great guy, I still see him, and he said, you've got an infection somewhere, we need to track it. So he started running bloods. but couldn't get, I said, are you going to give me something for these fevers and stuff? The fevers kind of subsided, and they'd only come at about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So I was going to Brisbane, pumping out a day, and then 2 or 3 in the afternoon they'd hit. And I had my little kit, I had my Codral, and then I would drive home. And I remember just sitting in the M1, in that PK with my head on the window. And one of my good mates, Scotty, again, the developer mate of mine, he would be ringing me going, it's got to be glandular, it's got to be this, like, you've been sick for so long. People like, you're using drugs, you're doing this. Well, I'm not doing anything, I'm just legitimately sick, getting heavier. And I remember I took my daughter to SeaWorld because she was in kindy last year, so I had her during the week some days. And I took her to SeaWorld, and I took a selfie with my daughter and myself and sent it to my family. And my face was like round. And I sent it to my family. No wonder they thought I was on drugs. Like, it was horrendous.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, what the hell's happening to me? And I wasn't eating unusual. I was eating less, still training and stuff. I just couldn't work it out. Anyway, long story short, they ran a blood test. They looked for the inflammation marker in my body, and it was at 460 something, I think, and it's meant to be under 5. And he's like, Dan, you've got a serious infection in your body, and I think it's in your heart. And I know I've got an enlarged left ventricle, probably from years of weightlifting and things like that, from pushing my heart. I've got another great friend, she's a cyclist. She's got an enlarged left ventricle from, you're not designed to be pushing that all the time. But I've done heavy weight since I was 16. And anyway, he booked me in for a cardiologist. So I went to see the cardiologist. They ran checks on me, and my heart was at 50% capacity. That meant nothing to me. My family had no heart disease. There's nothing like this in my family. I'm training. I'm not partying. I'm not doing anything. I don't understand. But what happens is, from what I understand, when your heart pumps, between 55 and 65% of the blood pumps out through your body. So my heart was at 50. He then said, I want you to go for an MRI. So he booked me in 2 weeks later. I booked in for the MRI, and then I carried on with my life, training, doing everything. Went to Brisbane on the Monday, sort of 10 days later, 11 days later. Same deal. I was sitting at Guzman and Gomez in Indooroopilly at 2, started shaking, said to Meg, I've got to go back to coast before my fever really kicks in. Rang my partner at the time, said it's kicking in. Drove back to the coast, and whenever I get back on the coast, I'd walk Burleigh Hill. Just, that's like my separation between work and home. I couldn't walk up the hill, and I was panting for breath and things a lot, but I was, get used to it. That's what you were saying before. It's like, this is your normal, and then gradually your normal's here. And because things happen over time, in general in life, it's like, sure. I meet a lot of guys. When I had a men's group in Brisbane called the Restored Kings, and it's like, how is an alpha fit male are you in this side? And then 2 years later, you're sitting in this paddock and you're nothing like the bull you once were. But it just happens. It's like you morph into this new creature. Anyway, I came home, I walked Burleigh, got home. By this stage, my parents were understanding something's up. And I was supposed to go, that was 11 days after I saw the cardiologist. I was laying on the couch. My parents called and said, what's your fever tonight? I think I was at 38.9 or something. I said, I don't even want dinner. I'm just going to take some Codral, go to bed. Went to bed, and at 10 o'clock I woke up and there was stabbing pains in my chest. I had that one other time in that 7-week period, but it was down here. It was agony. Like I was sculling Gaviscon, wouldn't go away. But this time I felt it move to the left, and I was like, shit, it's going to my heart. And my partner at the time said, go and have hot shower. I've got 3 shower heads in there. I turned all the showers on boiling hot, and that would subside the pain. I don't know, from the steam and things. And I was hunched over on the toilet, and I was falling asleep and sitting on the toilet, because the only way the pain would go was when you hunch over. Anyway, got through the night. I think I had 4 hot showers through the night, managed to get an hour or 2 sleep. And then the next morning I got up and I was getting ready for work. And my partner said, she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to work. I've got appointments today in Brisbane. And she's like, Dan, you've had 38.39 degree fevers last night. You've had stabbing pains in your heart. Please go to hospital. And I'm like, no, I'll be right. And I don't want to say I'm a stereotypical bloke that says everything will be right, but I'd been sick for 7 weeks. In that moment, I was literally put my jeans on, putting my belt on, and then she's begging me, please, can we call an ambulance? Eventually, she agreed. She called the ambulance, and I was that dismissive that I just packed literally like a man little pouch with my phone charger, my wallet, that's it, and my earbuds, because I thought I'd go to the hospital, I'll be back in 2 hours. The ambulance came, ran some tests. Before I was even out of the driveway, I was on fentanyl. Parents called me that morning, see how I went overnight, and I said, I'm in an ambulance, I think I've had a heart attack. And this is funny because then the ambulance officers were, where do you want to go? And I said, well, do you have private health? I said, yes, I do. So they said, we'll take you to John Flynn. So they took me to John Flynn. And I'm not into conspiracy theories at all. Like, I've pushed my body in every sense of the word. So I was like, yeah, I'll take the vaccine. Yeah, I'll do all this. I had lots of mates that don't, which I didn't agree with because I know they've done drugs or they've done this or they've done that. So I'm like, how can you not do this and you do this, blah, blah, blah. So I was just like, we're meant to do it, we're meant to do it. So I had the vaccines. Went to John Flynn, wheeled me in. I heard them on the phone. They came and saw me and they said, you're so sick, we're going to start working on you now. But bad news is your private health doesn't cover cardiac. And I'm like, well, take me somewhere else. And they said, good, there's no other beds available on the coast. And by this stage, my parents were on the phone. I was like, wherever you have, my dad's Israeli. He's like, wherever you need to go, go. Money's no object. But, you know, and I was like, I said, well, whatever. I'm lying there on fentanyl. And then they, funnily enough, I heard them coming back and they said, we've just spoken to Queensland Health. And I heard them talking, saying he's been vaccinated, blah, blah, blah. And they said, Queensland Health's going to pick up your tab. And I was like, great. So what does that mean? So we're wheeling you up. And they wheeled me upstairs.
Wow.
By 5 o'clock that night, I had a camera went into my vein, into my wrist, into my arteries, and I could hear them talking. And I knew. They said the left ventricle's enlarged, which I knew. And everything, all the other ventricles are healthy. And I thought, well, that makes sense. I'm a healthy guy. I train, walk, sauna, do everything. I was overweight, but I was largely overweight because of all this weight gain that happened at the time. But I indulged in lots of different things, so, fair enough. Then they wheeled me back down and I would text my parents, my partner, I was like, I think everything's sweet. My left ventricle's enlarged, we knew that, but all my arteries are clear. And then about 40 minutes later, the cardiologist comes down and goes, I've spoken to Prince Charles Hospital and they're happy with our plan for treatment, but if not, you'll go there. And I was like, why am I going to go there? And he said, for a heart transplant. And I was like, what? I said, I was in the gym yesterday, mate. I was at work. I cold plunged yesterday. Now I'm talking heart transplant. And he goes, yes. And my partner burst into tears hysterically. They said, what do you think you weigh? And I was like 125, 126. I was 132 or something, I think. And they said, we're putting on restricted fluids of 1.5 litres a day. That includes like milk on your cereal, coffee, everything. And we're going to run all these things to make you, pee out all this fluid. And my partner showed me, I didn't know she did this, but she took a photo of me maybe a week before when I was asleep. And I was like blue and bloated. It's like you've been pulled out of the ocean.
Wow.
But you don't see it because you're transforming slowly. And yeah, I was that full. So when your heart's failing, from what I understand, all of that fluid I was drinking in like 8 litres a day kind of water was all going into my organs. So I sat there for 6 days with things in both wrists. And that was an interesting experience as well, because the people you think that love you, you don't see a lot of them. The people you never even think of, some of my staff, turn up to the hospital within days. So that was a bit of a brutal reality check as well. So it's quite, looking back a year on, it's kind of interesting and fun to talk about. But at the time, it was kind of like, holy shit, where's my brother? Where's my sister? Where are my parents? How come the first person that's turned up is a guy that I met, that worked as a bouncer at the Pink Monkey I walked past and met, and he follows my Instagram and he came to visit me. Or a competing agency sent me gifts and came to see me. And I was like, it was, but you're not thinking about it, but in hindsight, it's an interesting experience. Yeah. Anyway, so I spent 6 days there. I left there 11 kilos lighter, and they told me, they brought in viral experts, bacterial experts. My parents came. They're like, "Has he been on drugs?" They said, "No, it's a virus." But when I left, they still don't know what it was.
Wow.
So they couldn't tell me. I said, "Surely you've had viral experts, bacterial experts." And one nurse, he's been a nurse for 28 years. He said to me, "Dan, they're looking at things we've never even heard of, and we can't tell you what it is." So I was a little bit skeptical. I'm like, how can I get that sick that I'm almost dead? So my heart capacity had dropped to 30%. Wow. So it went from 50 to 30% in that 11 days. And I didn't realise that 10% you need a heart transplant or you die. So wow. In 11 days, I went from 50 to 30. That's 20 points. Another 20 points, which could have happened in the next week. And I might have dropped dead. So pretty surreal.
Big time.
Wow. Yeah, man, it was like full on. And I had listings. I had like vendors ringing me. One lady rang me and sprayed me. She seemed so lovely, but she rang me one morning and sprayed me hard. Their building and pest came back with issues. And I was looking at my little girl. She was here. She's 5 at the time. And I was looking at her, listening to this woman abusing me at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I said, "You know what? Shove your listing up your ass." I said, "I've just found out my heart's failing. I've got a 5-year-old daughter. I don't need your abuse." And I've never spoken to a customer like that. You know, I've been trained over years. If people are yelling at you, let them yell till they run out of air. But when I look at my little girl on this veranda I'm sitting on and I see my little 5-year-old girl, and I'm like, what do I need at all? Like, I don't need this. And anyway, left there, said to the doctor, he goes, "No training for 6 months, no work for 2 months, 1.5 litres of fluid." And I'm like, "Doc, if I don't train, I'll be in a different hospital. I need this. That's my therapy. That's my sanctuary." I said, "Can I walk along the beach in Burleigh?" He goes, "No, you can walk around the block." And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Anyway, I said, "Give me a number, because I'm going straight from here to JB Hi-Fi, and I'm going to buy a watch, scales, and probably an Xbox or something." Because what am I going to do? I haven't played a gaming console since I was like 15. But I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do for the next month? Yeah, so anyway, I said, "Just give me a number. I'm a statistics guy." He goes, don't get your heart rate over 150. Went straight to JB Hi-Fi, met them, told them what happened, hooked me up, spent a couple of grand, went home, put the tracker on, and ever since then I track every single thing I do. I spent about a week going to soak every day, floating around, and just to try to get some kind of interaction and with people and some kind of health. And then the second week I got pretty depressed. I drank, even though I was only allowed 1.5 litres of fluid a day. I was like, well, if I have a couple of scotches, then I would just have a couple less waters. And because I got really depressed, you know, I was like, and then to be honest,
so many changes to adopt to, you know.
Oh, bro, and like there's a million times worse things, but for me, I was like, so I can't do any of the things I do to cope with my stress. I can't train, I can't walk, I can't go see people. I was too scared to eat anything that I didn't make.
Yeah.
And I started Googling like everybody does, and I'm like, oh my God, tomatoes has lectins in it, and this peel can rip your gut lining, and I was like, I can't eat tomatoes. Like, you know, like you really get in your own head. And anyway, to be honest, after the second week, I had my daughter's birthday. Everybody left, and I sat on my back deck and I was bursting into tears. And I called one of my friends that we set up that men's group, and I said, "Mate, I don't have the skill set to sit here." I said, "I've got the skill set to start a business, to walk 20 k's a day. I've trained with a torn bicep. I'm happy to drive from Brisbane. I've sold houses in Laidley from here. I don't mind, but I can't sit here." And he goes, "I've known you 5 years. You've overcome whatever obstacles you've had. Go back to the gym tomorrow and just do what you can do and watch your heart rate." And I did. Packed my gear the next morning. It was a Monday. Went to the gym, watched my heart rate. Spoke to a mate of mine who's 10 years older who had a heart attack a year earlier. He said, do 30% of what you once did and do sets of 20 and just watch your heart rate. And I did. And the rest is history, man. I went back to the gym. I took it very carefully. 1.5 litres of fluid isn't a lot. When you minus, 500 ml coffee in the morning, that leaves you a litre. Anyway, that was it, man. And for the next, I reckon it took me 6 months to wind back and, you know, and realise what's really important. And now I'm 20 kilos lighter than I was. Well, I wasn't this morning. I've been a bit greedy with past the last couple of days, but I was about 20 kilos lighter last week. I don't stress as much. Those people that would ring me and abuse me, I don't engage in that conversation anymore. It was really brutal. I had to cut a lot of people and things from my life but it's all right when you've got an excuse because your life's depending on it. So, you said earlier something about, not being able to say no, but when your life's depending on it and you're like, I can't be involved in this because I could die and I owe my daughter needs her dad. When it gets to that point, you learn to say no very quickly. And it's like now but it's just the way it had to be. And I get people, I think I told you on Friday, and I'll be walking Burleigh, on my calls, ringing my vendors, doing my thing, and then someone messaged me on Instagram and goes, don't you go to work? And I'm like, I'm always working. But what difference does it make if I'm sitting on this veranda chatting to you and working from here, or I drive all the way to Brisbane to sit in my office chair and make the same calls, the same people. But it took a long, long, long time to change my mindset to make that okay. Because we were raised, Dad's Israeli boots on the ground, lead by example, first in, last to leave. That's how we were taught to live. And I found myself, I was driving to Brisbane to do what I'm doing right now, but I drive an hour and a half, 2 hours back to sit in my office.
Yeah.
And for what?
Yeah.
I can do that here. I can do that walking along the beach. Same outcomes. But the mindset, and to me, honestly, that is my hardest challenge now, is managing my own expectation on myself to not be guilted into going to Brisbane and sit in my office when I could do the same thing here. You know what I mean?
100%. Wow, man.
So,
that's a really deep and full-on experience to go through. I'm glad you're able to sit here and have the conversation and continue to live life. It's fascinating, I'm sure, more so for you because you know how you used to think, feel, act compared to how you do now. And I've just got a short insight from a conversation, but it's from what I understand, there's a lesson in there that I'd love to make sure it gets conveyed if you're listening to this, is that it doesn't need to take a major health event to be able to change the route you're on, the path you're taking, the decisions you make, the way you train, the way you eat, the way you look after yourself, the people you're around, and all those things. We're back, mate. It wouldn't be a remote video podcast without a little bit of tech interruption, but that's totally fine. You can hear me okay there, mate?
Yeah, mate, loud and clear.
Awesome. I was just elaborating before when we had a reception issue that it's such a massive thing you've gone through, and it's great to hear you be able to be vulnerable and share it. So I really thank you for that, and I'm sure anyone listening, there's so many lessons in there and so many, I call them gold nuggets, like key takeaways. But the other good thing is that I wanted to touch on is that what I talked about just prior to you sharing that journey is that you don't have to wait for the major health event or the huge life interruption that unfortunately some people don't come back from to make those changes, whether it's fitness, nutrition, wellness, who you spend time with, where you work, like all of those. There's so many elements there that you've consciously thought through, which is awesome. And no doubt, because something so impactful and big causes you to think through that and be like, how do I want to live and operate and think? But yeah, if you're listening to this and you've, heard that story from Dan, take those lessons. If you're on that trajectory where you're like, things aren't going really well and my health isn't in good order, don't wait to sit on the hospital bed.
No,
do something now, you know?
absolutely, absolutely. And this, I probably waffled on a little bit. It's quite, it's a detailed journey, and I think it's important to if people can have the patience to listen through it. But what I took from it, and somebody wise said to me before all this happened, because I was one of those people, I'm like, everything I do at 110. If I can't achieve it, I don't start. So that means, being a great father, I wanted to be at every event. If I looked at my phone while I was with my daughter, I'd feel guilty. If I missed a listing presentation, I'd eat myself up about it. If I was in the gym, if I train like I'm there to train. I'm not there to talk. So everything I did, if I throw a birthday party for my family, I expect it to be perfect. And my attitude with life is, and I don't know, again, maybe when I was young, I was 12 when I worked in a factory, and I learnt very early, it's like, if you're going to do a job, do it properly, otherwise you end up doing it again. So I don't know whether it's just the way I'm wired or whether it's, what the sort of mentality I was grown up with. But what I've learned and what somebody wise said to me is, Dan, 80% is enough. And I'm like, no, like 110% is enough. And they said, no, 80% is enough. And a doctor said to me, actually, he said, Dan, if I have 100 hospital beds and 100 hospital beds are full, people die. And I was like, shit, that's horrific. And he goes, no, that's life. He said, if I have 100 hospital beds and 80 hospital beds are full, we run like clockwork. And the takeaway from that is, be satisfied at 80%. Not easy, and some people would strive to get to 80. Some people 80 is not enough, but I try really hard now to say, if I get 8 out of 10 listings, if I eat well, 8 out of 10 meals, if I spend quality time, 8 out of 10 of the time, it's good times. Or I'm with my daughter. I don't make every single event. I used to eat myself up with guilt if I missed something, but now I'm like, be grateful for that and be satisfied at 80%. And, I have a lot of people come to me, a lot of mates now, and they're like, I'm 43 and I still train 5, 6, 7 days a week. If I don't have my daughter, Sophia, I train every day, and I try to cook my meals and I try to do everything right. But, I still go out for Chinese once a week, or I don't drink alcohol at all. I don't do drugs. Sleep's a big thing for me. So, I want to be home. I want to have my magnesium powder at 8 o'clock. I don't do this 3-2-1, which I've seen, no food 3 hours before bed, no drinks 2 hours before bed, no blue light 1 hour before bed. But I do try to have my magnesium powder. I do try to eat a good meal. And when you're so dialed in, when you live very dialed in, it's really interesting to notice. So if I have 2 Tim Tams before I go to bed, I find I sleep better than when I don't. So I think about it, and I'm like, well, why is that? And then I look into it because I'm inquisitive. I'm like, oh, maybe my insulin spikes a little bit, so that helps my sleep and my REM sleeps longer. So I track everything on my watch. I'm an analytical person, so watching my watch, waking up in the morning, going, all right, I had a balanced HRV yesterday. I had, good amount of REM sleep. I had this, I did this. What did I do yesterday to be conducive to a healthy sleep, which gives you a healthy life? And what I've learned is, 8 out of 10 is enough, or 80% is enough. And if you can try to live like that the best you can, and there's factors. We have shitty days. You have somebody blow you up, or you crash your car, or you got a bill you didn't expect, or something bad happens. Then you don't plan for it. So you got to allow for those things. But if you can just be satisfied with that, and a lot of it boils down to habit. And it's like, if you wake up, you try to have healthy habits. You know what's good for you. You learn what's not good for you. I still have ice cream. I still, don't always do my 10,000 steps. I still, go out for dinner and enjoy my life. I don't get every listing. I don't sell every house I list, unfortunately, especially in the market at the moment. But you just need to be not so hard on yourself to achieve and be great in every way, because, the things you get up in your own head, everybody's living in their own head. That's what I think is really important. my number one thing that's happened to me is my health, but that doesn't compare to somebody who's got a child that's going through chemo.
Yeah.
That doesn't compare to somebody who's had an accident. Like, put things in perspective. It's the biggest thing in your life, which is great, but and your life's your life. But there's a guy in my gym who used to work there, and I think he's about 28, fit, healthy, good-looking guy, baby, lovely wife, and he ran the Gold Coast Marathon last year, and he dropped from cardiac arrest at 28. He now comes to the gym in a wheelchair, can't talk, and
Mate, the reception just went a bit dull. What happened to him? I just missed that sentence.
So he ran. There was in the Gold Coast Marathon a year ago. He dropped from a cardiac arrest issue. 28 years old, fit, good shape, handsome guy, young child. Really confident young man. I didn't know him very well, but I knew who he was. He dropped during the Gold Coast Marathon with a cardiac problem, went into a coma, and he's now in a wheelchair, missing a leg, with scars on his head, and you see him in the gym. I follow his social media and fist pump him, and you're like, holy shit, man. A year and a day ago from that, he was probably worrying about minuscule little issues, how many people are coming through the gym, or, did he eat the right food? And now the blokes can't walk. And it's like, just every day is a blessing. And, I bought my first house at 20. I bought my second house at 23. By the time I was 30, I had 7 houses. And I thought I was just going to keep going. Then the GFC happened and everything went to shit. But, and it was funny because perspective, man, just keep perspective. Like, what's enough? And this is another thing. We grew up and I used to say to my dad, what's enough? And he goes, a little bit more. A little bit more. And I grew up in that atmosphere and I was the same, and now I look at it, and it was part of my post that I shared with you. It's like, I no longer am craving all the things that I thought I wanted.
Yeah, wow.
When my heart failed, I started watching that show Alone on Netflix, which I've never seen before, about survivalists. And I was like, cool, I'm going to go buy myself a bow and arrow because I can do that in the nature reserve next door to my house. I don't have to walk anywhere. Still competitive. I'm really competitive. Still a bit like masculine. I'm alpha male. So I went and started doing that. Then I was like, oh, how do I get a gun license? I'm going to start hunting. And I just started systematically checking through my bucket list of things that I wanted to do that I very, very likely might never have got a chance to do. So now myself, a couple of the boys I do business with, we go hunting every 8 weeks. We're going in 2 weeks. And it's bloody great. They're all entrepreneurs. They all have businesses. We're all bound by our phones. And it's 2 days we go to the bush and we hunt. And we cook. Awesome. And they're all different ethnic backgrounds. There's a Serb, a Croatian, Italian, Dad's Israeli. And we all cook food. And, we get limited phone access, which is the beautiful thing. So we are there in nature. And it's that's something fantastic. And like when I love animals. So I was like, I'll only shoot feral pigs, when I started. But, now it's like, and I still, I love animals. I don't want to hurt them. But I've tried it. And I bring home meat, and I feed it to the dogs, and I brought home deer recently, and I cooked a deer for the family. Awesome. And it was really weird to sit on your veranda out here and have a meal that you shot and you ate.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
But so now I'm like, I took my daughter to the snow last year. I got a big tattoo on my back with the Star of David and a lion representing the lion heart and my daughter's name. And like, it's just the little things in life, like, enjoy those and enjoy the memory and try to be present. And that's another challenge. And everyone I speak to, my mates, they turn their emails off their phone, they get rid of social media, and then it creeps back in. So it's obviously a battle of the times. I don't even want to say our generation, but it's
we just all have it in our own ways, hey?
I think so, man. Like, I don't know. I'm sure you have your regime to try to where you want to be. As opposed, and what you think is your perfect setup, but and just strive for it, and accept the fact that some days you'll drop the ball.
Totally.
That particular doctor said to me, he said the problem with men, and I don't want to be sexist here, but he said the problem with men is they think everything's like a football game. There's winning and there's losing. And I was like, yes. And he said, it's not about winning and losing. It's about navigating the obstacles that are thrown your way. And now I look at things and I'm like, it's so bloody true. If you can look at life and think to yourself, this is just an obstacle that's come my way. It too shall pass, like you see on these memes and reels on Instagram. It will pass. And then there'll be another one. And then sometimes in your life, you feel like you're up against the ropes with Tyson and you're getting obliterated, whack after whack. Happens to me as well. Happens to me all the time. I'm like, I can't take anymore. And then, but you know what? Just do the right thing. Be positive. Give your body and your brain the best chance it can with good, healthy food. You know, give yourself good nutrition. Exercise. Go out there and walk in the sun. You know, I don't feel guilty now. I'm going to go to Burleigh now and because I've done 8,900 steps, I'm going to take my bulldog and go for a walk in Burleigh.
Nice.
And follow up all the calls I've missed during this podcast. But don't feel guilty because health is wealth.
Mate, that's an awesome
Your health is your wealth.
Yeah,
and if you don't have it, you can have a Ferrari, you can have 50 houses, you can have all this. And then look at the Steve Jobs thing that he says on his deathbed. Like, his billions didn't save his life.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So, by all means, be ambitious, hit your goals, achieve all the things you want to achieve. But stop and smell the roses a little bit and, you know, enjoy watching, you know, your daughter or your son run out of school and give you a hug. And I do it all the time. Happened to me on Wednesday last week. I had a bloody quiet day. Pick my daughter up every Wednesday. As I'm walking in to pick her up, I get an offer on a house. As I'm walking in, and I'm like, shit, why couldn't this happen 2 hours ago? Because I know the offer was a bit low, I'm going to send it to my vendor. My vendor's going to get angry. They're going to want a detailed conversation and blow me up, which I know will affect my mood for the next few hours, if not the rest of the day, just as I'm picking up my baby girl. But that's how it is.
Totally.
That's how life works out.
You
It would have been great if I received it 3 hours ago.
Prepare for,
processed it,
have a plan for, and
had my conversation, arrived at my daughter, fully present. But shit happens. That's life. So you do your best. So she's off running around in the park with the kids. I'm quickly, you know, texting, working out my approach, send my offer off, work out how to deal with it, let them digest it, say I'll speak to them that night, spend some quality time with my daughter, then step away and do my call and walk my vendors through the crappy offer they got on their property. And you try to do, and just realize you're doing your best.
100%.
You know, no one can ask for more than you do your best. And if you can put your hand on your heart and go, I'm doing my best to be a great dad, I'm doing my best to be healthy, I'm doing the best I can for my vendors, I'm a good friend, I'm a good partner, but it all boils down to you. And again, I found this to be a very selfish mentality when I was younger. It's like, you know, you're your number one. If you're not good, you're not good to anybody else. But when you almost die, you realise it doesn't matter how many houses I had or how many, you know, how much GCI I make, or if I'm no good and I don't learn to calm myself down. And I would, like, I can feel it when I get offers that are bad or I'm stressed, my face gets hot, I go red because my blood pressure's going up. I can feel it now. I'm that dialed in with myself that I can feel it. So is that worth it? Is that worth maybe losing your life over? Because now it's not. It's not. The deal's great. The deal pays the bills. The deal's fun. I love it. But that if a deal falls over, the next deal will come. And I really believe now, I watch a lot of Tyson things, and for such a nutcase and aggressive man, he's so insightful now. And I watched something the other day where he's like, you have to love the journey. You have to love the hard times, because that's what life's about. It's not just about the good times. And it never made sense to me until recently, and now I watch it. And I said to somebody recently, I said, I'm looking forward to the next shit thing happening to me, because I'll know after every shit thing, something fantastic happens.
Totally. Yeah,
You just need to grit in, do the right thing, get through that tough shit, and you'll come out the other side, and some gift will happen. It's just the universe works like that. You just have faith. I feel so sorry for these people who take their own lives because there's no other alternative. Because no matter how tough it is, no matter how big that mountain is in front of you that you feel it impossible to cross and you can't see the path, if you can just shuffle forward slowly, you will get there and you'll turn around and all the obstacles you've had will just be lessons and a memory.
That's awesome.
And I promise, if you can live by that and just work hard on yourself and don't feel guilty for taking time out to do what's right for your own head and your heart, it's so crucial.
Mate, that's great. Really appreciate the insight there, and mate, I'll wrap us up. That's like, there's so much value in there. If you're watching this, there's I say this often when I have these conversations with people. If you didn't get something out of the podcast, hit replay, because often when you ask these questions and you listen to responses from both parties, there's just like, all you need sometimes is that one little thing that you hear and you go, that changed the trajectory of my life and my decision making, which is exactly what the intention of these conversations is. So, man, thanks heaps for coming on the Fitness and Business podcast. If people want to get in touch with you, mate, what's the best way to find you? Website?
Mate, jump onto my Instagram. I've got danielbrisblat.com is my website, or my Instagram. I'm quite active on there, and would love to chat with you there. And that shows you a bit of an insight into my life and what I try to do. And as I said, I put a couple of meals up there. My little girl, my lifestyle, my successes. And another thing I think is really crucial in this industry and in life is to show some of the failures.
Totally.
We all fail. It's not, and I remember I had one young agent working with me, and we went and listed this real, it was like a meth den. We couldn't even photograph it, was so bad. And he's like, how are we going to sell this, Dan? And I was like, bro, this real estate isn't just Gucci and Prada, son. This is what it's about. This is a development opportunity. And we did an aerial shot. Sure enough, we sold it in 2 weeks as a knockdown. But, people just want to show, and I really dislike this, eating oysters at the Carlisle, drinking champagne, doing all this fluffy shit. You know what? Yes, that's a part of it, and if you're successful, you'll get there. But, man, you're dealing with people. You deal with death. You deal with divorce. You deal with people losing their jobs. It's really not, there's a lot of hard stuff. And I don't think enough people talk about it, and whether people don't want to be vulnerable, but it's, that's life.
It's real.
And be raw, be honest, be open. Like, there's great things and there's tough things. There's days you have huge wins and you sell a house in 2 hours. I've done it. And there's houses I've sold, took me 6 months because of whatever reason. Tom Panos says something. There's an asset and there's a liability. And I look at that with all aspects of my life. I'm like, is this relationship with you, if you're my good friend, is this an asset or a liability? Is this mutually beneficial? Doesn't have to be financially. If we catch up, do you walk away and you feel you took something from that as well as gave? Because and I also find this with relationships. So many relationships I have, sometimes it's 80% me giving, and then sometimes I'll be going through a shitty patch and somebody will give me a lot more. That's fine. That's a relationship. But if 6 months, 12 months goes by and you're giving,
and it's always offset,
and it's always like this, that relationship isn't mutually beneficial. That's a one-sided relationship, and it's not serving you. So, look at it, and I look at everything like that now. I'm like, it's give and take. Nothing to do with money. I don't like it when everything's financially, financially, because it's not. Some of the best people I hang out with are just good people. And so, look at it, choose the company wisely, invest in your health. Obviously, this is what your podcast is about. Health is wealth. You can be as rich as shit and be unhealthy and drop. And what are you going to do with all your money? Stuff it in your coffin?
Great, mate.
Look after your health.
That is like, I'm going to make that the advertisement sentence of this podcast, because that's a cracker. I love
All right,
that.
my brother. Thank you for
All right,
reaching out
dude.
to me,
Mate,
John.
let's
You're a
wrap it up.
beautiful
Thanks for
guy.
listening,
You're
everyone.
doing
Thanks
some
heaps for joining me,
fantastic
Dan. I
things
really
for
appreciate your
people,
time.
and I
Hope
wish the
your
best of luck
afternoon
to
walk at
you, and
Burley
keep
goes
pushing your message, man.
magically. Yeah, man. Really appreciate it, dude.
Lots of love to you, man. Take care.
Talk soon, mate.
Bye, my brother.